Hi! Throughout the previous tutorial in this series, we have seen many examples demonstrating the use of Python built-in functions like max, min, sum, length, count, size and many more. In this video, we will define our own Python function. But before that, let's figure out why do we actually need it. Here it is a simple code snippet which checks whether this num is even or odd. If we want to test it for another number, let's say 13, then we need to copy paste the code and change the value here. This is not a good way because we are having the repetitive line of code. What we can think of, we can put this into one separate block and whenever required we can call it. This is the basic concept of function. In mathematical terms, a function is represented something like z is equal to f of xy. Here f is the function name which operates on the input x and y, and whatever the output of its function is, we return it and store it into one variable called z. Similarly, if this is a repetitive line of code, what we can do is we can put into one group or one block. We can name that block, let's say check even. This function works on the input called num. This is the num. For Python interpreter to identify this is a function, we have the keyword called def. So this is the basic syntax of a function in Python. If you are from the another programming language, you might be having like something like this one. Return type, function name, input, we define type, block of code, and then we finally return it. To return the output from a function, we have the return keyword. For example, instead of print statement, we can have return statement. We can also define Python returns type. For example, to define its type, we say colon int, and for return type, we use arrow symbol. Now, if we'll say check even, then it says that check even is a function having one argument called num, which is of integer, and it returns the output as string. This is called the doc string, where you can document your function. Here I am using one Python extension called Python docstring by Nils. You can download this one. So generate docstring. So here you can define, and if we'll say check even, now you have a proper docstring. Here it goes the summary, the number of arguments, and what is the output. So this is how we create a function. The next thing is, how do we actually run this function? For example, if we'll say print done, this method will not be called done. You can see that here the output of this function is not getting generated. So to call a function, we will go with the mathematical description. So we say f of x comma y. So here the function name is check even. The input is num. So we say go for num is equal to 10. Okay. And the output generated, we store it into, for example, output. And now if we'll say print output, then the output will be printed. You can see that 10 is even. Now let's learn how to debug this code. So just put a breakpoint over here. Press F5 to debug the code. First of all, it does not run the code until it is being called. So it just registers that yes, this is a function variable, check even, having its special variables you can find out here in the variable section. If you press F11, again it will go to check even. The argument is passed as 10. So we have the value over here. It goes and check whether this number is divisible by 2 or not. So yes, it is. So if condition is true, we return the output, and the output is stored at this location. 10 is even, and finally we print the output. In this way, we define and call Python function. Note that whenever we define a function, this input is called parameter, and this thing, whatever you pass it, this is called argument. So we can say that check even has one argument as 10, which is passed here as parameter. What if we want to pass multiple arguments? Consider you have a function called findsum which returns the sum of two numbers. So we will say def findsum n1 of int and n2 is of integer return type will be integer, and then we return the n1 plus n2. To call it, we will simply say find sum. Here you can see that we have to provide the value of n1, that let's say 5, comma value of second argument, for example 7. So to provide the multiple number of arguments, we separate them with comma. If you run this code, it will give you 12. Here you have noticed that the argument which are getting passed in the same order parameter has been defined. What if we want to change the order? For example, n2 is equal to 5 and n1 is equal to 7. We can do it something like this. It will run, it will give us the same result. Now consider a scenario where you do not pass this value n2. This function findSum has 2 required parameters and we are passing only 1 as arguments. In that case, it will throw us an error saying that we have one missing required positional argument n2. To avoid this, we have the concept of optional parameters. So n2 has default value as 10. And if we will run this code, it will say value of n1 7 plus value of n2 as 10, that is 17. Now consider a scenario where you want to find the sum of variable length arguments. For example, we want to find the sum for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In that case, we need to define a function again. Let me rewrite it first. And when we will run this code, you can see that the output is 15. So based on the number of arguments passed, which method is getting called, it is determined. This is called the concept of method overloading. So this is not a good way of doing it. Instead of doing this, what we can say that this is one items, for item in items, go to each item, define a variable called sum, initialize it with 0, and here just say sum is plus equals item. And when this is finished, just return the sum variable. But again, if you will run this code, it will again throw an error. According to Python function, it requires only 1 argument, but we have given 5. To work with variable length of arguments, we have to use asterisk before that. Now it will be considered as one list, and now it will give you the result. Similarly, we have the concept of keyword arguments. If you will press double asterisk, just return what is the value of items. You will find out that the output returned is into a dictionary form. What we can think of, if we are having one asterisk, then it will be a list, and if we have double asterisk, then it will be considered as dictionary. So we can simply say something like n1, right? Let's do it using this concept. Return sum, and here we will say key comma value, because that is a dictionary. I have already created a video about the dictionary. If you have any issue, then please go through that. There might be a scenario like you have to declare a variable which is not being in use. So you can place it with underscore to avoid any linting error. And if we will run this code now, it will give you the result. So in this way, we can play around with a function. In the next video, I'll tell you about recursion and the scope of variables inside the function. Till then, stay tuned. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Bye bye. Have a good day ahead.